everybody. Welcome to our great session. We've been working on this for the past few years, and we're so excited to be joined by all of you today. I want to first start our session by doing a bit of a land acknowledgement on the land that I currently reside and work from for the Canadian Red Cross, which is the city of Toronto. I acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas, the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, which is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. For those of you who might be joining us with some visible or invisible disability, I am a 5'8" Middle Eastern looking man with dark black hair and dark features. And I am excited to be joined today by an exceptional panel. I'll introduce them one at a time, but maybe I'll start by Dr. Salim Sohani, who's Director of the Global Health Unit. Salim, if you want to give a wave to the audience, that'd be great. And then we're also joined by the exceptional Dr. Faiza, who used to be our former senior research manager, but now has taken on another senior leadership position within the organization at the Canadian Red Cross. Hello, Faiza. Thanks for joining us. And we're also joined by my exceptional practicum student, a wonderful future global health leader, Farwa. Farwa, if you want to give a little handshake to people to know that you're on here, that'd be great. Thank you all for joining. We're hoping this will be an informative and insightful session to all of you on academic volunteerism at the Canadian Red Cross. My name is Firas, Khalid, and I'm a CHR Health System Impact Fellow, currently with the Canadian Red Cross the past 2 years. I am an example of what academic volunteerism is, and so it's important that I just allude to some of the key insights from this session. For us, academic volunteerism really bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our organization at the Canadian Red Cross. They contribute their skills and experience to help the CRC achieve its goals more effectively and efficiently. And we have the opportunity to network with the other professionals, including ones in this room today, to really help build relationships and learn about new opportunities. I leave it to my exceptional panel today that you'll hear from, including 510 team who will introduce themselves, and the Nepalese team to talk about some of our academic volunteerism efforts. Thank you all for joining. Please get engaged. Please join in the chat. Feel free to ask us any discussion questions in the debrief. So as I said, the purpose of today's session is really about sharing lessons from academic volunteerism efforts within and outside the Canadian Red Cross. We wanted this to be as outside of the Canadian Red Cross as possible, and you'll hear about a survey that we've conducted to really try to have an outreach to other organizations around. We also want to showcase how other national societies, including the 510 and the Nepalese Red Cross societies, engage in academic volunteerism, and to share the results of our survey that we've conducted for the past year. Without further ado, I turn it over to my exceptional colleague, Dr. Faiza. Faiza, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Firas. Also, I'm reminded by your presentation, Firas, that I also started as an academic volunteer as well. So we're in the same boat. And what I would want to do right now is sort of set the stage based on our experiences. So as Firas mentioned, in my previous role, I was managing a wonderful team of health researchers within Canadian Red Cross, and we have to, I personally am very grateful to our senior director, Dr. Salim Sohani, who had the vision and the foresight to ensure that we get students, and it's a two-way street, in a way that we benefit from the practical expertise and the know-how, and the students develop and grow into young public health specialists and researchers. Personally, for me, the topic that I was doing my PhD in would have been purely theoretical had I not been part of Canadian Red Cross. So that practical experience has been really enriching. I will walk you through in the next few minutes, hopefully. I'll walk you through our journey over the past 4 to 5 years in terms of developing academic partnerships, engaging youth, how we did that, how it established and grew over time, and why it grew over time. And then I'll hand it over to Farwa to tell you a little bit more about the survey results. Firas, if you could please change the slide. So as you can see, our academic volunteerism grew over time from 2018, when I started as a doctoral fellow. And although I was partly funded, there was a lot of time that was given to Canadian Red Cross as volunteer because I was engaged and I wanted to learn more. And it's true of all of our other postdoctoral and doctoral fellows. And you can see that we've had a lot of master's practicum students, for example, over the years that came through our doors that were with us for 2 to 3 months of their practicum, but many of them stayed on as volunteers, that you can see in the orange brown symbol that, in the slide. And during this time, we were able also to hire many of the students that work with us. So there was a period of time, you'll see in 2020, 2021, that a lot of hiring took place. This is when we were escalating or scaling up our support to COVID-19 work that Canadian Red Cross was engaged in, and we needed people. And this was a good time to really take on students who had been working with us. But you can see many of the students do stay on as volunteers because they're committed to the work that we are doing. We also had partnership with our Public Health Agency of Canada, and a field epidemiologist has been placed within the health research team within Health and Emergencies. Next slide, please, Firas. So along with the previous slide, you can also see that our academic partnerships grew as well. So the number of students that we engaged, our partnerships grew alongside. And mostly these partnerships are through our master's practicum students, our doctoral students, our postdoctoral students, but there are other research partnerships. For example, a couple of years ago, we did a research project with Johns Hopkins University, which was concluded and published as well. And you can see from 2018, when there was one academic partnership that was clearly visible. In 2022, there are many, including some international partnerships that we are exploring. And we are now thinking of exploring through some of the work that we are doing to start looking into academic partnerships in countries that we work in, so in country partnerships for other research projects. So we've grown over time, and that was mostly because of the partnership we started building with our students. Next slide, please. So just to give a bit of an idea of where our academic volunteers or students end up with, so over the past 4 or 5 years, we had 56 students and volunteers working with us. Out of those, there were 4 postdocs, 2 doctoral candidates, 37 master's students, and there were 10 master's students who were doing their coursework with us. And we also had 4 purely volunteers who were students and working with us. Out of those, 22 were retained for over 6 months, 10 as volunteers, 12 were hired. And you can see that they were hired in different capacities, from health officers to operational leads, research associate to a senior manager like myself. And many of our students went on to work with different agencies, public health agencies in various areas within health in Canada. So pursuing medical school, going to global affairs in Canada, doing clinical residency programs. But we continue to have the relationship and affiliation with them. Next slide, please. So quickly, we did an analysis of what we got out of the students. So what we estimated that over the last 4 years, we had 30,162 extra hours that the students provided to our work, which is a huge number. And at least over 15,000 of that work was free and unpaid. The average number of total working hours was around 293. Which was, of course, much higher during the COVID time, where a total amount of 100 to 120 hours per week was spent or given to us by students. We did a bit of return on investment financially, and it was financially actually more valuable, almost 3 times the input that we provided. But the most important investment was the social investment, which was the development of early and mid-career researchers and public health specialists within Canada. And we're hoping with our global partnerships, we can support that outside of Canada with our partner countries as well. Next and last slide. Quickly, just wanted to give a brief idea of some of the outputs that our students were able to help us support. So Dr. Firas took charge of the evidence summaries that we were developing before, and created that into a whole program. And as you can see, over the last 2-3 years, we were able to develop over 440 evidence summaries based on operational questions. We provided infographic and technical presentations for our leadership team and for our teams for timely understanding of events that were happening globally. A lot of that was developed during COVID. We developed tools. We already talked about youth engagement. They were involved in over 25 projects, supported us in data analysis, and they were able to submit abstracts, and over the last 5 years we've submitted and presented in various Canadian and international conferences with over 55 abstracts accepted and presented. So with that brief overview, I'll hand it over to Farwa to give you a brief description of the survey that was conducted.
Dr. Faiza. So now we'll share the results from a survey that was meant to map academic volunteerism efforts across the Red Cross movement. So there were 2 identical surveys, and they were disseminated among volunteer supervisors and staff from the Canadian Red Cross and partner national societies. So these survey questions asked about the various roles of academic volunteers at Red Cross, the advantages and challenges of having academic volunteers working within the national societies, the opportunities for further engagement with academic volunteers, if there are any further areas of research analysis and synthesis among these volunteers, and lastly, the status of academic funds in national societies to support academic volunteers. And so for the survey that was sent internally at the Canadian Red Cross, we received 8 responses. And for the identical survey that was sent across the movement, we received a total of 10 responses, and 1 response each from the national societies of countries including Iceland, Bulgaria, Portugal, Comoros, Kenya, Tonga, and 3 responses from the Australian Red Cross. And these are the different departments that responded from each national societies. So from Canadian Red Cross, we heard back from the departments of Health and Emergencies, Health Intelligence Research and Development, Community Health and Indigenous Peoples Help Desk. We heard back from the Domestic Department at the Iceland Red Cross. We heard back from the Organizational Development Departments at the Bulgarian and Kenyan Red Cross. The Volunteering and Youth Departments at Portugal, Comoros, and Tonga Red Cross also responded. And finally, from the Australian Red Cross, we heard back from the Emergency Services, Strategy and Performance, and International Humanitarian Law departments. So from these survey responses, these are the different roles that academic volunteers across the movement take on. So such as you can see here, responding to research evidence requests, engaging in original research work, drafting organizational level reports, engaging in operational field response, executing administrative tasks, and other responsibilities like organizing events, providing technical support, and assisting with knowledge translation activities. And as you can see here from the Canadian Red Cross, the academic volunteers are most engaged in original research work, while the most common responsibilities that volunteers from other national societies take on is responding to research evidence requests. That's all from the survey and for the roles of academic volunteers. So I'll pass it off to Dr. Salim now.
Thank you so much. And what I would briefly touch upon is the advantages and the challenges that we face. And I mean, there are a number of those things. So Firas, you could click all of them in one go. So I'll just highlight few as I have very limited time here. That we should not only see volunteers as substitute who just come in, do something and get out. People identified that volunteer brings diversity, culture, diversity of ethnicity, coming from different ethnic group, geography, and that brings in a very diverse kind of learning and enriches our work. The other important element that I want to highlight here is that giving volunteers an opportunity, and academic volunteers, particularly when we looked at the younger group of volunteers from a number of academic institutions, it allowed them, like this is a platform which generates potential future generation of humanitarian response worker, because while volunteering, they were experiencing this, and our program saw the potential of those volunteers. And as Faiza showed in one of the slides, that we ended up recruiting many of them. So that is something that that we feel that would be an important thing. And then also you could see several other elements, like they produced, helped us produce evidence summaries, bring knowledge and experience from a specialized area, and several other elements. The next slide, Firas. Now, with advantages, there are challenges. Of course, the advantages is not only there, they are accompanied by challenges. And one of the major challenge that we have seen, and what people articulated as well, is that when volunteers are exposed to the program implementers who are already working 8-9 hours a day in response, they may find this as an added burden. Of course, volunteers would contribute, and they have contributed, but there is an upfront investment. You have to spend time to mentor them, to groom them, to bring them up to speed. And where would the staff or the managers find that time? So that was one of the key challenge that that people identified. The other one is that students who came in as an academic volunteers, or the doctoral and postdoctoral fellows, they have their own research study and their own engagement. So there is a limited time, and the tendency is that it is so huge for them to learn, that the tendency is that they might be jumping in all directions, and we have a tendency of engaging them everywhere. So important element that we found out of this challenge is how do we streamline and protect their time, and not let them get overwhelmed with a number of challenges. But also importantly, how do we encourage a reciprocal learning, so that they bring in certain things and they get the opportunity of experiential learning by getting engaged into the program. Next slide. So we're talking about further engagement, and this is where you could see that some of the volunteers we had seen who had been interested in international, others were interested in Canadian operations, and both were very fine. We tried and managed and created opportunity, and in future our international cooperation and the program may have huge opportunity to take advantage. One of the postdoc volunteers who worked with our program implementing interventions in South Sudan provided such an important contribution that opens up many doors. In our Canadian operations, our community health program engages volunteers and in a new model of story-based data collection. And this is where I think there is more potential, those who are interested that could do. But also, we had a great experience with doctoral and postdoctoral academic volunteers, as well as those who are international medical graduates who also volunteered. Some of them also volunteered their time. And when I'm talking of postdoctoral, Firas is a living example, or when we talk about doctoral, Faiza is a living example. But I can also see on this participant list that we have Magdas and Sarosh, who had been also our academic volunteers. Next slide, Firas. I think we'll continue with further engagement. And here, the point that I wanted to highlight is the opportunity of volunteer to engage in specific assessments. Like if they are bringing in a specific expertise in GIS or any kind of assessment, livelihood, now we can use them into that kind of thing. But also under knowledge translation, many of them engaged in creating evidence summaries, and they can continue to engage and inform program planning kind of work, because when we are looking at planning and implementation, it needs to be evidence-based. And many of these academic volunteers are super well placed to use their academic rigor or bring that academic rigor into our programming. Next slide. So this is where I just wanted to highlight that how do we engage volunteers in academic research, and I would also ask a question that that in your own work, have you engaged volunteers in research, and how best, if there are any experience that you may have. But we have found in our own program that many of these doctoral and master's students, they were very well placed, because it's not only them, but through them we link up with their academic supervisors. So that brings in another angle of academic rigor. So engaging volunteer in research, that we thought was super important. And then the last slide, I think, from my side is around, Firas, the next slide, is using research to improve academic volunteers' effort. And this is where, I mean, this is a raw area. Firas and Farwa and colleagues have started looking at this, and but this requires further elaboration to see how best we can have the research to improve academic volunteers' effort, and developing formalized system to do that. There is a huge social return on this from Red Cross perspective, and particularly encouraging interdisciplinary collaboration among academic volunteers within various departments. And then I think this is my last slide, Firas. Partly this had been covered by Faiza in terms of academic funding, because here what you could see is that many of the volunteers, they really came as volunteers, but also some were partly volunteer. So there was a partial funds available, which we leveraged to get some more funding from CIHR or from MITAC. These are Canadian institutions who provided some kind of external funding. So you could see some of the breakdown there. Back to you.
Thanks, Dr. Salim. We turn over now to our colleagues, Corina and Marc at 510. Corina, over to you.
Thank you very much, Firas, and hello to everyone online. My name is Corina Makodimitraki, and together with Marc van den Homberg, we are presenting the efforts of 510, which is the data and digital team of the Netherlands Red Cross on academic volunteerism. So I work at 510 as a volunteer coordinator, and Marc works at 510 as the research lead. So I will talk to you about the professional volunteerism that is happening in 510, which is also very much academic related. So to give you a bit of an overview, what kind of volunteers we have in our team. At the moment, we have 43 volunteers, but this number has fluctuated between 40 and 80 people. So quite a big difference. And we have people who are specialized in many different skill sets. So we have people focused on data science and analytics, on the development of software, on design, on translations, and on communications, on geographic information systems, and on data responsibility. So our volunteers have a multitude of different backgrounds. They are mostly, they have minimally a bachelor's, and often they are even trained as PhDs. So we have quite a high level of knowledge in our volunteer pool. Thank you. So the next slide is more dedicated about how we work with our professional volunteers, just to give some inspiration perhaps to the people who are participating in our call today. So how it works with us is that as a volunteer coordinator, I find suitable assignments for our volunteers depending on the skills that are necessary to conduct the assignment. And so I match the volunteers with projects that are based on their skills. And the way that volunteers work with us is that 510 is based at the headquarters of the Netherlands Red Cross, which is in The Hague, and our volunteers are based within the Netherlands, which are, I think, sometimes the locations can be maybe even 4 hours by train from the headquarters. So we encourage hybrid working. But often we also have some check-in moments in the office, especially when we kick off the assignment. We try to encourage our volunteers to come to the office at the expenses of the Netherlands Red Cross to meet the people in the team who they will work with and who will, is it possible to please go back a few animations so that not everything is shown? So I would like to still stay at the assignments for now, if it's possible. Thank you. Yes, as I said, we work in a hybrid mode with our volunteers, and we have a close collaboration with the team. The way that we recruit our volunteers is often quite in a luxurious way passive, because people know about 510 and they actively approach us themselves. So we have a Kobo form embedded on our website, which allows people to register as volunteers if they want to, and depending on the amount of projects that we have available at that time and how many people we have. Is everything okay? I see suddenly the presentation is not shown anymore.
Seems like Firas is drop out, or
okay.
I don't know what happened.
Okay. Is it
Yeah, okay.
That's okay now?
Yeah,
Yes,
looks
we
like.
can wait for Firas to come back, but I can share my screen meanwhile.
Thank you, Farwa. Can you please go to the next animation, which is the recruitment process? Thank you. So as I was saying, we don't often have to do so much to actually recruit volunteers. But in some cases where we are looking for specific skill sets, for example, software developers or people who have a specific academic background that can help us often by helping students, about which Marc will talk about in a bit. We actively recruit people by posting ads on our website, and we always recruit by following diversity and inclusion principles. Can you go to the next animation, please? Thank you. The way that we recruit people is that we put a minimum availability of 4 hours per week to dedicate to the projects, and for a minimum of 6 months from the moment of starting, as to ensure that we don't have a huge turnover in the team, which also costs us a lot of time and also project funding, and to make sure that our volunteers always have something to do. It's quite demotivating if people are only available, let's say, for 2 hours and there's no project that needs only 2 hours of work. So this is the way that we work regarding availability. And for the last animation, which shows the engagement that we have with our volunteers, how we keep them connected to the team is that we do quarterly meetups, which are usually in a social type of gathering. For example, in April, we will have a cultural potluck dinner. So we will meet each other in the office, and sometimes we also do hybrid events. We also try to show our appreciation towards the volunteers by writing blog posts, mentioning their work and their names. And of course, I also check in monthly with our volunteers to see how everything is going, how their projects are going, and how they are doing personally. So we have quite some close connection with our volunteers. And of course, our volunteers also come to the office often. in this slide, I would like to explain a little bit what kind of projects our volunteers work on that are related to more academic type of work. So for example, we have, well, a volunteer of us has worked on creating a rainfall monitor tool to forecast heavy rainfall in Malawi. And this is all in the theme that 510 works on, which is anticipatory action. And so we are in this theme trying to predict more what the weather will do. So what the impact of the weather will be, rather than what only the weather will be like. And thus to be able, based on those predictions, to take actions that will mitigate the effects of a potential disaster. So we predict hazards before they happen, and these are connected to certain actions that the national society who is using the tool can undertake in order to mitigate the effects of the disaster. This is also the next shown example is also one that falls within the theme of anticipatory action. In fact, most of our volunteer assignments that I've shown in this slide, and you'll see in a bit, are within this theme. And this is something that was set up by one of our volunteers to forecast heavy rainfall in Egypt. So he researched what kind of models there exist at this time, and then tested the model which was chosen for the use case of Egypt. Thank you. We also had one volunteer who worked on building a drought impact database for Ethiopia, and she collected drought data in order to create a prediction model for drought centered in Ethiopia. Thank you. We also had a volunteer collect and prepare data on Zoot, which is a heavy, very harsh kind of wind that occurs in the area of Mongolia. And so this also contributed to the model predicting that. We also have a student, yes, one of our students at this moment, a thesis student, is collaborating with one of our volunteers who is actually a postdoc into doing research of existing methodologies for storm surge prediction models. Oh no, sorry, I switched, I messed it up in my mind. So this is what I'm talking about with the collaboration of the student with the postdoc. The postdoc is conducting a grey literature study about nature-based solutions, and she is collaborating closely with a bachelor student. So we have a postdoc volunteer who's collaborating with a bachelor student. So I think it's quite nice to have this kind of a collaboration so that the bachelor student can still learn from someone who is outside of her immediate environment in the master's, and yeah, achieve it in this way. So these are a few of the assignments that our volunteers work on. And with that, I will pass the torch, let's say, to Marc, my colleague, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have them regarding volunteer work later at the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Corina. Yeah, my name is Marc van Homberg. I am with 510 since we started the initiative in 2016. At that time, we had around 2 or 3 master thesis students a year. Now actually we're up to 15 or sometimes even 20 master thesis students and interns. And as Corina explained, we have a very, let's say, also digitized process for volunteers. For master thesis students, we have also parts of our process of recruiting them that are, let's say, digitized and formalized. But the process is a bit more informal still, because also the kind of the scoping of a master thesis research is a process that, yeah, is usually a bit more, let's say, fuzzy process that requires a lot of interaction, and it can be less well shaped than let's say a bit smaller volunteer task that we work on. If I can have the next slide, please. Yeah, you can maybe show them all already. That's maybe easiest. because yeah, actually what we then do if a master thesis student approaches us is that we try to match all the different interests, let's say, and that's what I try to show here. But leading in this process is very much what a Red Crescent National Society needs. So the host National Society, they are center stage in this process. We really want to understand what they need and what is important for them. And that will be in one of our thematic areas. So 510 has 5 thematic areas, of which I show now only 3. So one of them is anticipatory action. We have also water and landscape and emergency support. And those thematic areas are already, let's say, based on extensive consultations with the Red Cross National Societies. So in those thematic areas, we try to come up with research questions that are of importance to these Red Cross National Societies. And then we have a kind of a bottom-up and also a top-down process in which we try to link these research questions to students and researchers that we are in contact with from different disciplines, as you can see in this slide. So for example, we have students with a hydrology background, health sciences background, geosciences background, social sciences and data science backgrounds, because the research problems we try to tackle are really, let's say, transdisciplinary. So usually we cannot solve them by just bringing in one kind of discipline. Sometimes we also work more top-down. I have to say that's especially in, oh, sorry, still the previous slide if possible. That's especially for data science, because I have to say that the data science students, let's say, find us a bit less easily. There are also data science students that are more in a business faculty, for example. So there we have a lot of connections with data science consultancy companies like Pipple. And also we worked with Ortec before, because they then offer sometimes a kind of a joint master thesis possibility where the student is partly working with this data science consultancy company and partly with us. So that's a way for us to get also an influx of data science students. And yeah, the topics, maybe I can briefly mention some of them. They are quite similar to the ones Corina mentioned. So in terms of anticipatory action, a lot of our work is around creating trigger models for specific hazards like floods or droughts. In terms of water and landscape, we are now working on also nature-based solutions and how, for example, a nature-based solution can lower the flood risk. So that's an example for Zambia. And for the Turkish Red Crescent, we are working, for example, on providing support in identifying where is the damage. So we work on deep learning technology and deep learning techniques for rapid damage assessment. So yeah, that's an example of the kind of work we do in emergency support. Then next slide, please. So as I was already explaining, this collaboration is really bottom-up and top-down. It's an iterative and interactive process where we match our interests as the Red Cross, the interests of the student and of the university supervisor. And of course, we have to meet the academic requirements of the university. We also have to make sure that we have a right to play, given what other groups are already doing. So I also try to keep track of literature as much as possible, so that we're also not, let's say, duplicating research that has been done already. I have to say that the collaborations that we have built up over the years with specific academic researchers are very fruitful, because, yeah, if we then know one another more in depth, then this collaboration is very, let's say, smooth and easy. So also some of the academic researchers and professors I work with, they come back every time, let's say, with then a new master thesis student. So we can also build on what we have constructed in the past. And in that case, actually no formal agreements or MOUs are necessary at the university or faculty level. Next slide, please. So in terms of success factors, I would like to point out 3 main points. One is that we always try to ensure from the start that what the student is going to do is linked or can be linked to a project that we have ongoing with a Red Cross National Society. And that there is support from within 510. So not only from the supervisor in 510, so that can be me, for example, or somebody else in our team, but that there are also more people in the team who kind of know of this master thesis research and who are really endorsing it, so that the student can also get support beyond his official supervisor in the team. Secondly, we really always have to ensure that there is a minimum of data available when the student starts. And for a data science related research project, that can be only, let's say, secondary data. But for more the social science or disaster risk management related research, primary data is, of course, a big bonus or a plus. And in the early years of 510, we did manage often to have master's thesis students also go to the field. But that is actually very time consuming to organize. It requires also commitment of the host national society. So yeah, I've seen actually over the years that this has become more difficult, and also in the end we think in terms of capacity building, that's also better that a host national society does this with, for example, a local university. So that's also something we now try to keep more in mind. Yeah, and then we have regular meetings and formal decision moments throughout the whole research process, like a midterm and a green light meeting, to decide, maybe to adjust a bit the research direction. Then third, that's a proper handover and follow-up. So if a student finishes, we don't want to end up with just having this thesis on the shelves. We really want to make sure that the results can be, for example, built into one of our products or services. And this requires to be really proactive. Once a student has left and moves into a new job, it's very difficult to do still this handover. So here we also have a process in place where we ask the student to put his code, for example, on our GitHub. We of course have all the other information or data in our Teams environment, and we try to explore options to publish the master thesis research, not just publishing for publishing, let's say, but really to have a severe quality check by the peer review process. And because this is an evidence-based that we can also use then towards, for example, donors to prove that what we are doing is really evidence-based. And with that, I hand over back to Firas.
Thank you, Marc and Corina. Now we'll be watching a video presentation from the Nepal Red Cross Society. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here because of the time difference, but Mr. Bhola, who is a program coordinator at the Nepal Red Cross Society, has recorded a video for us, so we can watch it now.
And I would like to urge everyone to jump in the chat for any questions or comments they might have for our panelists today. Thanks. Go ahead, Farwa.
Thanks, Firas. Please let me know if everyone can hear correctly.
This is Bhola Ghimire from Nepal Red Cross. I'm program coordinator for Nepal Red Cross. I've been working with Nepal Red Cross since 2018 March on the health service department, working for the various health projects and the operation COVID response, as well as involved in the different health emergencies. Today we are going to discuss about the effort that we build for the academic volunteerism in our national society. I'm going to discuss about that. Before that, I will just like to brief some notes regarding national society so that it will be easier for everyone to get the sense of the Nepal Red Cross. With the establishment in 1963, Nepal Red Cross has been working as an largest humanitarian and largest volunteer organization in country, and we have a network of volunteers in all 77 districts, 7 provinces, as well as 1,500 plus sub-chapters, where more than 6,000 junior Red Cross circles have been established at the different schools and the colleges, where the youth volunteers work tirelessly in supporting people for the different causes, as well as supporting community for the resilient development. So that's all for the Red Cross. And let me just quickly move towards my presentation. The major agenda for this presentation are some fact sheets, what is the number that we have been doing and the Red Cross with the different areas, and beside that with the engagement of the academic volunteers and how and where they have been mobilized. Also measure the impacts of the academic volunteers in the Red Cross and ways that we are planning for the future and how we can improve. That could be a good lesson learned for the other national societies as well. So let's start with some fact sheet, and this is the fact sheet for the fiscal year 2021. You can see the pie chart over here representing the percentage of volunteers engaged in various departments. We have several departments over here, but moreover the academic volunteers are involved high number in the health service department, that is 47%, and simultaneously followed by the central blood transfusion services, that is 24%, and junior youth department, that is 16%, and disaster management department 13%. These are the different departments. They have been engaging the volunteers, and in the year fiscal year 2021 we have 164 academic volunteers at the different phases, and they are like, some are like part-time and some are full-time volunteers engaging from the different academic institutions, and 105 were female and 59 were male, and of which 126 were undergraduate and 38 volunteers or graduate. They are doing their graduation. So at my right hand side in the top, you can see the screenshot that I have posted over here. We have a MIS system, Management Information System of Nepal Red Cross Society, where we build all the volunteers and all the members. And you can see the drop down highlighted in the blue color that we can join them and record them, and also keep them in rosters, and they are inbuilt within our MIS systems, from where we can, in the needy time, we can again reutilize them, and they will be within our systems. And leading towards the down, while disaggregating the volunteers with their academic courses, the highest number were from the public health background, there are 52, and followed by the management 44, and the lab technicians, and mostly working for the blood transfusions, there are 35, nursing 28, and medical doctors are 5. This shows that the 164 different volunteers with their academic courses, they have been inbuilt within Nepal Red Cross Society under the different program, different projects, and in the different interventions, and in the and also in the COVID-19 response operation. And what actually that we do for the volunteer and where they have been engaged, and basically we use the academic volunteers for their technical expertise on those areas. For an example, we use the lab technicians, and we use the public health personnel in the lab technicians in the blood services, public health volunteers in the resource survey and other intervention studies, and volunteers are also for the capacity building, and capacity building at their own also, and engaging with the Nepal Red Cross Society. Volunteers develop their own capacity on working with the Red Cross movement, and in the they got the own capacity on the humanitarian setting, how they act, what should they do, and all the things. And beside that, we also use the capacity building of the local volunteers who are working at the grassroots level, as well as even in the staffs also. We used some technical volunteers for the capacity building at the field level. So beside that, they are also engaged for the research activities and the evaluation of the different projects, maybe the baseline, some midline, and even for the outcome studies of the projects. And they also inbuild the innovations in the involvement in the involvement area. They use different tools like the digital tools, and they use the techniques, new techniques for the trainings and for capacity buildings. They bring the innovations. So that's why we engage volunteers in our program and the projects. Besides that, it helps them to build a network and the collaboration with the other expertise, as well as in the university and colleges, so that they can just advocate about the Red Cross values, principles, and the humanitarian needs in their circles, with their colleagues, as well as with their other juniors in the university, so that it helps to develop a collaboration between the Red Cross and the other volunteers. And so far, NRCS have been engaging with the different universities and the medical colleges in country at the headquarter level till now. And we have a MOU with the Dulikal Hospital, Kathmandu University Hospital, where we have done MOU during our REDS project supported by Canadian Red Cross, Rural Emergency Trauma Services Strengthening Project. We have a MOU with the Dulikal Hospital, similarly the National Academy for Medical Sciences, it's a medical college, similarly Pathan Academy of Health Science, and for Tribhuvan University, we have a MOU between Disaster Management Department and the Tribhuvan University for the varied disaster management related activities. And in the past, we had a tri-party agreement between the McGill University at the Canada, as well as the Dulikal Hospital and the Nepal Red Cross Society regarding the exchange of knowledge and even exchange of these academic volunteers and often the different level of studies. Now, what I remember is few of the colleagues from the Dulikal Hospital went to McGill University for the different capacity building activities and the trainings as well. And the MOU has been over now, but also we have a good relation between the McGill University, the Dulikal Hospital, as well as within the National Red Cross Society. And some notable examples here, there are lots of examples regarding the volunteer mobilization activities, but I would like to just highlight some notable examples that basically volunteers, they have been involved in the baseline and inline study of the different projects and programs. And I added some examples like the CCBSP projects that is being supported by Canadian Red Cross, Healthy Aging Project, which is a piloted project by the support of the Swiss Red Cross. Volunteers who were involved in both baseline, inline studies, and secondly, and with the nationwide survey of the pre-hospital care services of NRCS, we use the public health volunteers to have a nationwide survey. We use the graduating volunteers from the Tribhuvan University who did this survey and provided a comprehensive report of the nationwide status of condition of pre-hospital care services run by the Nepal Red Cross Society. And in the different blood donor motivation programs and in the different blood campaigns and supporting the donation activities, basically nursing and the lab technician students, those volunteers went with our team for the blood donor motivation activities at their own college and even in the other universities, and also they support them in the blood donation activities. Besides that, we are using this Red Cross Emergency Clinic, the RCRC tool for the varied emergencies, and we have a academic volunteers who were inbuilt in the training, and they are in the rosters, and they are deployed during the different emergencies, and they work tirelessly in serving the people during the different emergency in the country, and they have been deployed at the different remote parts of the country as well under the different emergencies like the flood, landslide, and the recent earthquake in the western part of the Nepal, even during the COVID-19 also. This includes mostly the medical doctors, nurses, and the public health personnel. Also, the capacity building of NRC's field level volunteers, which I have already explained, and staffs and female community health volunteers, health workers, for an example, like COVID-19 infection prevention control, basic life support, EMT, and the other varied community health services. They have been using in capacity building activities. As we are performing the in-house survey, like the within the Red Cross family and the National Society, RCRC, PNSS, and we're doing the in-house survey on the COVID-19 vaccinations, their perception regarding the first vaccination, as well as the status and all the things. And recently, the new in-house survey has been done by the volunteers. I remember that there was a big plane crash in Nepal, and they studied the post-traumatic stress disorder among all of the Red Cross employees and the volunteers. And they are also involved in the different CAP surveys, knowledge, attitude, and practice-related survey conducted by the WAS, Health, and even the Disaster Management Department. As an example of Sarita Lama, who is the hotline volunteer. Red Cross volunteer Sarita Lama provides the hotline services to the community every day after attending her college. She studies at the Tribhuvan University and doing volunteering at the Red Cross and then in the hotline services. And I've quoted her line as well. I apply new communication strategy and techniques that I learned in my college, aligning with the NRC's RCCA communication, community engagement for accountability, and based on the RCCA policy. So this reflects that these volunteers use their new techniques and in the academia and use at their working stations and where they work. So they bring new innovation as well as the new techniques on the workplace. So that's what really excites us. Moving forward, NRC's further plan is to develop a separate guideline for engaging academic volunteers. Till that, we don't have a separate guideline, not even a SOP or guideline to engage for the engagement of these academic volunteers. They come over here like general volunteers coming through us through the organizational development departments and going through the regular process. But we are planning to develop a separate guideline for all these things so that they could be directly binded towards the projects and the departments. And we are also we do have, but we want to expand this partnership with the academic institution up to province level. Till that the partnership is at the headquarter level, but we'd like to extend it beyond the headquarter with the province. There are different universities and the academic institutions at the province. We'd like to have a partnership at the province level and with the different research councils, like Nepal Health Research Councils, medical councils, so that it would be fruitful as well as the systematic volunteering mechanism. And we are planning to have the engagement of volunteers and with the community and the conducting various of the evidence-based studies, research, aligning with the academic volunteer during the project design. Also, we are planning that we will inbuild these volunteering mechanisms within the project design also, so that there are lots of studies as well as the evidences can be generated by these academic professionals and academic volunteers. And till that, there is no separate mechanism for the motivation and recognition to the academic volunteers, but we will. This is the most important factor for the volunteers, and with this, they can yield a more fruitful result for the organizations. So we'll build this how we will motivate and recognition of the volunteers in the guideline as well. and till that it has been done at the departmental level, but we would like to institutionalize it and make a mechanism for motivation. Maybe it could be a opportunity for them for the job, or maybe there's some good recognition from the national society for their references and other things. So we are planning, and it will be discussed later on while developing the guideline for the motivation and recognition of those academic volunteers. Okay, thank you. That's all from my side, and I'm done my presentation.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for being patient with us today. I know we had a bit of a delay, but we really want to open up the discussion. We see that Ayla asked a question of Marc, responded in the chat, which I really appreciated, and I see that she had an answer for it. So we're opening up the floor for any questions so far. We have about 10 minutes, a bit less than that, for any questions or Q&A. I don't know, Marc, if you want to add more to Ayla's the question, or do you feel like you're satisfied with the question so far?
Well, if it's up to Ilya to say if she's satisfied with the answer, of course, I guess. But yeah, I can expand maybe on it that, yeah, we were now trying to set up the collaboration also with universities in the host country. But yeah, also that requires time, I guess, to, and it's depends also on the relationship that the host Red Cross National Society has already. So, for example, the Kenya Red Cross works a lot already with the University of Nairobi. So then it's, of course, also easier to kind of piggyback and to work with them together with the University of Nairobi. But in some countries, some Red Cross National Societies do not work that much yet with universities. So, yeah, then, yeah, you have to start a bit more from scratch. I see some similarities also with what we're doing in terms of digital transformation, where we also try to assess the digital maturity. And I think, yeah, you see also that Red Cross National Societies have a different kind of perspective or starting position in terms of working with academia in their country. So yeah, that's something we have to take into account.
Very helpful. I guess I have a question for Dr. Salim and Marc and Corina, the whole team. Could you see a potential for academic volunteers to have a cross collaboration between different Red Cross societies? So academic volunteers that work for the Canadian Red Cross, could they possibly potentially also work for the Netherlands, for other Red Cross societies? And if so, what needs to be put in place to facilitate that kind of partnership?
Firas, to understand your question, you mean that a volunteer that, for example, works with 510 also at the same time works with a different national society?
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that's a bit tricky in the terms of the fundamental principles of the Red Crescent and Red Cross movement. For example, we try to, in our recruitment process, we try to not recruit people from a different country other than the Netherlands, purely because we don't want to, based on the principle of universality, we don't want to deprive other countries of the talent and kind of accumulate it at the Netherlands Red Cross. But I don't know how it would work if it's a dual kind of model. So to have one person in two national societies, it could be that perhaps then maybe for every person who is working at the Netherlands Red Cross and wants to collaborate with the Nepalese Red Cross, we have a matching person doing the same thing. I would perhaps see that that could be, let's say, a balanced way of collaborating like that. Those are my thoughts on the matter.
If I could also add, I mean, this is a very interesting question, Firas, that this opens up more opportunities for volunteers to cross-learn. And one of the way could be that if the topics are similar, so let's say if we have a volunteer who is working on something on which 510 is also working, then there is a room for some kind of collaboration. I mean, I see your point, Corina, but also this could be a kind of learning opportunity. So it's not like hire this volunteer and full-time that volunteer goes to the other side or to the other country, but it could be within a learning realm and in terms of making academic contribution for cross-fertilization of ideas to go to other place, learn, come back, apply, kind of thing. The major issue here, Firas, I see is the funding. I think there is very limited resources, and if we have a volunteer who may be deployed for, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month on a topic which is also of interest of, let's say, 510 or IFRC or RC3, I don't know, whosoever, British Red Cross, French Red Cross, there would be a merit, but then all kind of other complications that we need to take care of.
That's great. I have a question for Dr. Faiza. It's one of our last questions. Faiza, do you want to jump in the discussion before I ask you the question?
I think that before all of that happens, it merits a discussion on the different projects that we are doing. So cross conversation between national societies, which we are trying to do through RC3.
That's great. Faiza, one question came to us in the Q&A was, who owns the outcomes and outputs of your research collaborations, the publications, the raw data, and possibly innovations that may also arise?
That's a very good question, and I would ask Dr. Salim to jump in terms of innovations. But I think the understanding is from our side that publications is usually a joint project. The data that Canadian Red Cross generates or has is stored in our database repository, especially the health related data, and that's a understanding with our academic partners as well. We do work with open source data as well as data that Canadian Red Cross has collected, and also data that Canadian Red Cross has as partners with other societies in our international programming. Regarding innovations in terms of who owns the innovation, this discussion usually happens before the beginning of an academic partner, before an academic partner is onboarded. Usually it's a joint one. We don't commercialize, we don't work on commercial ventures. Canadian Red Cross doesn't. So if it's for the benefit of the society, then we, from my understanding, is we do it case by case. The understanding is what we develop, be it training, be it anything else. This is to benefit the society, the national society, as well as the broader movement. And then, if beyond that, if it's beneficial to the society, then we really engage our legal department as well as to how to proceed. But these conversations happen before we start the partnerships. Dr. Salim, if you need to add anything.
No, I think you covered it very well, particularly around innovation, because that is part of those MOUs that we write and sign, where the ownership is very clear in terms of data. Generally, if it's Canadian Red Cross data, it's stored here. And if there's publication, of course, it's a joint publication. Particular question, Firas, in this relation comes for PhD students who are working on their thesis. It's their ownership in terms of analysis. We just want to make sure that the data protection element is abided by.
That's great. I want to thank you all for your time. Farwa kindly reminded me that we want to tell everybody that we have a workshop that's happening in about 15 minutes from now. It's going to be very engaging and hands-on, so we encourage all of you to join. To Corina, to Marc, Dr. Salim, Faiza, and others who've joined us today, thank you for your time and effort. And I hope that this session has really inspired you about the efforts that we can do to engage academic volunteers in projects that really benefit people that are most vulnerable. Thank you all for joining, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.